In this episode, I get to talk to Heike Yates. And Heike, she's actually German, but she lives in the States. She's lived in the States for years and years. And we talk a little bit about how that came to be. She wanted to meet a cowboy, so that was kind of cool. So, but she's just a super interesting person. I found her on Instagram and she stuck out because she has a Pursue Your Spark brand. And of course, I'm all about sparking your life after 50. And she helps women over 50 with nutrition and fitness. And so she's been in the fitness world ever since she had her first baby. And she's even an Iron Man or Iron Woman, I guess they're called. So she talks about that. So she is in great shape, but she also talks about intermittent fasting, which I'm fascinated with because I know it's a thing. And she was talking about how, I think it's a couple of years ago, she got to a place where she was a little overweight. She got there, she did all the things fitness wise, and she just couldn't solve her problem, having certifications, and she just was stuck. And so intermittent fasting was her solution. And so she talks about that. So I was really interested in that. And so maybe that'll help you if you're at a place where you're feeling stuck. But the other thing that I wanted to mention was we didn't talk about this until I stopped recording. After I record my interviews, we usually just chit chat for a couple more minutes before we hang up. And she said that when she was 12, she was overweight, really kind of obese for a 12-year-old. But she said she was in a size like 14 or 16 equivalent to, and she lived in Germany then. So whatever the size was, but she said it was equivalent to like in the US, a 14 or size 14 to 16. And it was really crazy because I was overweight, 30 pounds overweight when I just turned 13, like a month after or even like 2 weeks after, because I remember it was early March and I turned 13 that February, and I was a freshman had just finished my freshman year in high school. And I just had this feeling that nobody said you're overweight, Lori, you need to do something about it. I had this feeling that I was weighed too much. And so I proceeded to just stop opening the refrigerator when I got home from school, and I got into horseback riding. So I started doing activity instead. And over the course between March and when I went back to school in September, I had lost 30 pounds. And I've always been really hyper vigilant about my weight ever since, probably to an obsessive, point. But I think that's one reason why Heike and I we like have this thing in common where we care and we don't want to gain weight. And so when we get a little overweight, like 10 pounds, like she was a couple of years ago, and like I was like when I turned 55 and I proceeded to get in the best shape of my life, we just want to deal with it and we want to figure out a solution, and we do what we need to do to find out a solution. And so for her, she found intermittent fasting, and I know it's a great solution. She talks about how the digestive system changes as we age. So I won't go into detail, but she's been she was a great guest, and I really enjoyed talking to her, and I hope we get to meet in person because she lives so close to me. We really do live very close by, and I didn't even know that until we got on the episode and started chatting. So here's the episode. With no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives, and with me I have Heike Yates. And I found her on Instagram. I guess I was scoping things out, and you popped up, Heike, and I just liked what I saw. I liked what you do. First of all, she is 60 or almost 60. She's 59. So we're not going to age you to, we always add a year. And she's gorgeous, and she's fit, and she inspires people through what she does. And she's done it for a long time, although she did have a little bit of a midlife transition from an offline working environment to more online. So she's going to talk about that. But I think she has some really interesting things to talk about, especially as it relates to nutrition. And we all struggle. So many of us struggle when we get to midlife, and we get, that the little bit of the pounds start coming on. So if she has any hints on what to do, then that would be high value from this episode. But yes, so she is German. She's been in the States for a little over 30 years. I just found out that she lives real close to where I grew up. So she's not too far from me. We're on the East Coast. So welcome to the episode, Heike. I can't wait to get into the details of what you have to share.
Thanks, Lori, for having me. And that was like let's grab it all. This is Heike.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And so you do fitness and you do nutrition, which I love because, I think, some people choose to do exercise and avoid the nutrition aspect. I used to always say I work out so I can eat bad, and that's not really what we want to do, especially the older we get, it matters a lot. I've learned a lot about inflammation over time. Eating foods that might not be good for your body can cause the inflammation gets worse as you get older, right? When you're younger, your body can reflect that bad food better. But then as you get older, it takes a toll, and it creates a lot of the joint pain that people have can be fixed with nutrition.
No, I wouldn't say it can be fixed with nutrition. And I think once we hit menopause, all hell breaks loose, as I like to say, because our hormone changes are dramatic. Some people experience this time of their life much more dramatic than others. For me, I really didn't have that many issues through menopause. Yes, I got the hot flashes, the sleepless nights, which when you think I'm almost 60, I should be done and done with, because it's been 10 years ago since I finished, quote, air quotes for anybody, that I finished menopause, but I still have sleepless nights. I still have achy joints. I still, like 2 nights ago, I was dripping like crazy for no apparent reason. But we have to realize that even though we go through menopause, our hormones continue to change. It's not we do menopause, we do menopause and then we're done. And the body says, oh, now I'm great. Now I'm happy. No, our estrogen levels continue to drop. We continue to experience that sleepless night stuff and occasional hot flashes. And I know that one of my clients, she said, Heike, I'm 74. I still have hot flashes. So it is something that we can deal with through, I believe, right exercise strategies and nutrition strategies. But also, let's remember that we're getting older. Our joints break down. No matter how many supplements we're taking, how
Yes.
much collagen we're drinking down, or whatever it is that everybody swears by. We're individuals. Not everything works for everybody. And one girlfriend may say, this is it, take Oshkosh. And I tried Oshkosh and I'm like, yeah, so what was the big deal about this? It didn't do anything. But our bodies just break down from the inside as well. And that's when we're talking about the knees get a little creakier. You may develop arthritis. It's simply an aging process. And that also reflects itself in the gut, because the same thing is true with the gut. The gut gets, how do I say this best? Slower in digesting foods. It gets finickier in how it digests certain things. And that also goes back to the changes in estrogen and the reduction of that and the whole menopausal change. So there's so many.
I read somewhere that the gut is considered a second brain.
Yep.
Have you heard that? Yeah.
Yep.
I thought that was very interesting because we dismiss it so much.
And we, like you said earlier, in our 20s, we just put it away if we went out partying all night and the next day we're just not feeling so great. Well, if we would do that now, our body would just not be in a good place.
Yeah. And I agree so much with what you said, because we're all so unique and everybody experiences menopause very differently. I had really bad hot flashes. Like I could not, I was really suffering from lack of sleep because it was waking me up in the middle of the night. So I opted to do a patch, an estrogen patch, which my doctor said was, I think actually studies show that a reduction in the chance of breast cancer if you're on it, which I thought was crazy. But so, and I don't have history of breast cancer in my family. So she was like, okay, you're a good candidate for this. And it saved my life. And I had a really, really low dose. And I'm so thankful, because I was like, okay, am I going to continue to suffer as an insomniac, where I can't sleep and it affects everything I do? Or I'm going to take this drug temporarily to help me. And then it got to the point where, and she was fine. I mean, I could have stayed on it, but I think I did it for 2 or 3 years. And I finally said, you know what, I want to see if I can wean myself off of it. And then I've been fine. So yeah, it's sometimes you need help. And I think talking to people and seeing what they do is, and then trying stuff is always a good option.
And that's what, it's a good point. I mean, you got to try it. I mean, I felt that I could control the side effects of menopause very well with exercise and nutrition. Others are like, I can't even get my booty out of bed because I'm so tired.
Hmm.
So whatever works for you. And that's something that I always say, as I coach women also through menopause and with their health and fitness goals and also mindset needs when it comes to the changes, is if you are just having a crappy menopause and you tried all the over the counter stuff, talk to your doctor. They're the experts. They know you. You've seen them probably for years, and they can specifically recommend something that's good for you, like you got your patch, Lori.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you said, it saved your life. And for some women, it really feels that way. And I'm by no means qualified to talk about patches or any other medical approaches to menopause. I am not a doctor. I'm not an MD. So my scope of practice is nutrition, exercise. And of course, I'm here. You can talk to me and tell me anything because I have an advice for like everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. And it's great too, because I have a gynecologist who is my age. And so I think like I love having a female who understands me and is going through something similar as well. And she's like, well, I've used this. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, if you used it, then I'll try it. So, all right. So take me back, because when you were saying you've been in the States for about 30 years, that also parallels time-wise, I think, with when you started to get into the fitness that you do and you love. And I saw some of the pictures on your website where you're working with a ball and you love Pilates. So tell me, take me back. What brought you to the States? How did that parallel with your love for fitness?
Well, not at all.
Okay.
This never paralleled until a certain something happened. But I grew up in Germany, and I always had a love for traveling, and I didn't want to just go somewhere for a vacation. And I said, if I go somewhere that I really been wanting to go, which was the States, and I've told this story before, in my mind, I would move to the States, find myself a sexy cowboy, and marry a cowboy. I'm thinking Bonanza, hot guys, horses.
Oh, Bonanza. Yes. Yeah.
So this was my mind way back when. That's our 33, maybe 34 years by now. And
Well,
that's
Cowboy is south too. So did you go south, or where did you
how I
land?
ended up right here in Washington working for the German embassy here in the foreign
Oh,
service because
nice.
I got that job. I said, I want to go not as an au pair, taking care of other people's kids. I want to go somewhere where I can work, where I can stay more than 2 or 3 weeks or 6 months or whatever it is, and really get to know the country, travel the country. And so the Foreign Service allowed me to do that for 3, sometimes they extend the stays for 4 years.
And did you
So
speak any English when you came over here?
I was trained in British English. So can you imagine when you come to the States and everybody's taking like down like this and you ain't no idea what they're talking about? And you're like, what? Can you speak English to me, please?
And we don't think much of it. That's so funny.
No, and
Yeah.
so I was like, I
And
was
even the British English use words different. Cues and what's a cue? It's a
cute.
pool cue, not a line. Yeah.
And so just
So
the accent was just so, I was like, and I remember when I landed here and I was supposed to call the people to pick me up, and I didn't have any money. I didn't know how it worked. I was like, okay, I'll just show up. And then they said, here, call us. And that was way before cell phones were handy. So you still went to dial some number on the phone on the wall. And I stood there and I was like, well, how do I call somebody? I don't have any cash. I don't have anything else. And I remember this to the day. This woman said, why don't you make a click call? And I'm like, huh? A what? She said, click call. And I was like, I have no idea. And she said, okay. So she helped me to make my first collect call ever. I was like, I didn't even know something like this existed.
You know what? Some people, if they're younger and listening to this, they might not have a clue what that is. Yeah.
So yeah,
I remember doing that when I was in college because that's what we used to do is I would do a collect call to my parents and say, is Fred there? Because that was our dog. And that would be their signal to call me. So I didn't have to pay for it. They paid for it
they paid for it.
but they didn't really pay, but so I can't even remember why, like, because it wasn't long distance, but anyways, yeah, so you called collect to back in Germany to ask
No,
for
actually,
whatever.
to my coworkers here.
Oh, okay.
From the
Got it.
airport. So they were picking me up from the
Got
airport
it.
in Washington, D.C.
Got it. Okay.
And so that was my first experience. And I remember, again, when we drove from now Reagan National Airport over to Georgetown at night. It's what I love Washington. It's, to me, the one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And,
Yeah.
so I never forget that.
Yeah. So my mom used to always, so Heike and I were talking when we started, is I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. So I'm now like 2 hours south. So I'm very familiar with the area she's talking about. But my mom used to always go over because we lived just on the other side of, it's like Virginia, Maryland, and DC are kind of all together there. And so we would cross into DC because I think they had no tax on alcohol.
I think
So
you're probably right.
yeah. And so she saved money on her whatever she was buying. So like once a month, we'd cross the Key Bridge and there was a liquor store. I think the liquor store's still there, Eagles Liquor. And it's right on the edge of Georgetown. And we would park and she'd go in and get her liquor. We'd go home back to Falls Church. Yeah. So was this like 1990-ish?
No, that was earlier, 1988. My first child
Okay.
was born. So I
Oh,
got here, and what happened was I was finally here. And so your listeners know, I never married the cowboy because I learned that a cowboy is a farmer. And I was like, I don't want to do the farm life. That's where I came from. Because when I grew up in Germany, I grew up not on a farm, but surrounded by many farms. So I was like, nope, this is not what I was going to do. But the embassy work allowed me to explore the entire US for 3 years. And I drove everywhere in my little Chevy Chevette. If you ask me, I've probably driven there while I was here because I just loved it. And I met my first husband here.
because you were close to the beach and you're close to the mountains. Because that area is close to both of those places. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 hours to the beach and an
Mm-hmm.
hour to really nice hiking.
Mm-hmm.
That's really lovely.
So
And
how'd you meet your husband? If he wasn't a
so
cowboy, what would he classify as? City boy?
he was an attorney. What else is new in Washington,
Oh,
D.C.?
that's true. Yes.
Everybody is an attorney in Washington, D.C. We met at a party. Back in the day, he was quite significantly older than I was, but he was still a partier. And, we met, we clicked, we had a great time, and suddenly I was pregnant.
Yeah, that
So
happens.
that's when my son was conceived 32 years ago, almost 33 years ago. And we maintained to stay in the DC area. I started building my business with the fitness. And when my son was born, I needed a job. So I quit the embassy because I wanted to be a full-time mom. But I thought, and this is not meant to be misunderstood, I just didn't want to be home alone with a kid. I thought it was so boring to do kid stuff all the time. I missed adult conversations. And there was no way that I would hire a nanny, go back to work. And so I was trying to figure out how can I make my own money without giving up too much time away from my son. And I took a class at the local YMCA here in Bethesda, in Maryland. And it was just amazing. It was dancing, it was weights, and it was great. And people were friendly. And I gained a ton of weight because my doctor said, keep eating. So I was big as a boat. And I thought, oh, this is fun. And they then needed teachers. And they said, you move so well in class. Would you like to train and become a teacher?
Cool. So,
And
and I remember I used to do step class back in the day. That was
oh,
about the time they did step. Yeah.
this was dancercise.
Dancercise. Okay.
This is
Before jazzercise.
before jazzercise. There was
Wow.
dancercise, and it
Yeah.
very much like jazzercise.
How fun.
learned a routine, you did
Yeah.
weights, you had every song had a little dance and you had to learn those dances. And it was really fun. But this set me up because I enjoyed it. I love dancing. My husband, my now husband, and I met Argentine tango dancing. So we are dancers. But what I loved is I could go away from the house. I could bring my son, and later, 3 years later, my daughter was born. So both of them came with me to the child care wherever I was teaching, in a church or wherever they had facilities where we were teaching these dancercise classes. And it just fit really well in my lifestyle. I made a little bit of money. I had a little bit of independence financially. Although, if you look at it, I made nothing, but still, it was my money and my
Yeah.
time. And I created
And
my.
allowed you to stay with your kids and still be busy and not crazy. Cause I'm the same way. I think if you're meant to be a preschool teacher, you love being at home with your kids, but a lot of us aren't. And we have to do other things.
I needed just something different away from all of this. And so I
Yeah.
created from that point forward. I just naturally seemed to fall into teaching. And every time, when I was pregnant with my daughter 3 years later, I was like, this is great. I can now learn how to teach pre-postnatal classes, which I ended up teaching. And then it was like, oh, great. Now I need to learn about weights. Oh, then I became a personal trainer. Then, there was step aerobics. Then there was kickboxing. I was, before Thomas the Promise and before any of the big kickboxers that we all followed years ago, we taught kickboxing here at the clubs. And it just helped to create a very healthy lifestyle. And that then goes in with nutrition because you exercise, you want to eat something that makes you feel good and gives you energy.
Plus that
Um,
you're doing modeling really good stuff for your kids, right?
oh my God, they got their.
Especially girls. Yeah. I mean, boys, it matters, but boys seem to like get into sports and stuff and it just is natural for them. Whereas girls, it's really good to expose them to that healthy lifestyle, I
And
think.
they could always come, and they were always, as they
Mm-hmm.
grew older, I changed places I worked. And then they would come for summer camp. They would do tennis, they would do swim classes, they would do soccer. At the place I was working, they had all these summer camps that they offered. So the kids, both of them, would have the opportunity to learn a sport while mom was at work. So it was it
Yeah.
was it was I
Yeah,
think it was
that's neat.
perfect.
So I'm curious about this because I had somebody that I just interviewed who uprooted her whole family from Australia and moved to Italy. And how do you not miss? Like, I'm sure moving to the States, although it was exciting, your friends and your family. And so I just find people who do what you did fascinating because we sometimes like we have a dream, but we put our dreams on hold or we suppress them because we're so worried about what we're going to hurt other people or we're going to miss other people, whatever, and so we don't go and do that exploration. So what made you want to come here permanently, and how did that feel?
That was not a second thought. This is
Mm,
really what wanted to do, is I wanted to live in the States. And I am by nature a loner. I don't belong to big women groups or communities. I have a couple of friends that I am in touch with, but my parents do their thing, I do my thing, and whatever, I see them and I talk to them, and now we're Zooming. But I have an incredible sense of need for freedom,
yes.
and the freedom expands itself through all my relationships. And when I look at my children, my son just until recently was living in San Francisco, where he's married, and they're currently traveling the US because they want to move to Germany of all places for jobs,
That's
just to live
fun.
abroad for a while. My
Hmm.
daughter now lived in Northern Ireland for the last 2 years, and she's been gone for I don't know how many years, and every now and again she comes back. But I think they have the same need of freedom to go where the wind blows you without any obligations. And I never felt guilty
Mm.
leaving people behind. I'm like, well, they can come anytime they want to. They can visit me. I can go there, but I need to be on my own path. I need to create my own future of whatever the future decides itself to be. For me, I find it changes every 10 years. I have some new mission that I'm on.
Yeah. Yeah. And what she said to me, which I thought was interesting, is because you don't know, you're envisioning what might happen. You don't really know what will happen. And what she says is it turned out that they saw their family more because their family came to visit them because they wanted to come see to Italy. So they would see them like 4 times a year. And so I thought, well, that's interesting, because maybe if you had lived in Australia and stayed there, you would have not, it would have been like, and you don't make it a priority, right? So the quality time's better and that sort of thing. So we're in Germany, because I've been to Germany, so I'm curious.
Munich area.
Okay, so I've been to the Hofbrauhaus.
Very
That's,
good.
yes,
Very good. Gotta
yes.
have your beer.
You got to have your beer. I'm not a really big beer person, but yeah, it's an experience. Yeah, I love Germany. That's great. And were you an only child?
No, I have a younger brother who is exactly the opposite of what I am.
Mm.
He's a homebody. He lives like a stone throw away from both of my parents, which is great. As my parents get older, they have him to rely on. And I say, well, if you really, really need me, let me know. And I come over if any caretaking needs to happen and things like that. But he's the complete opposite. He's like, I admire you for your spirit and your travels and the confidence when you just, he says, I need to have everything planned out when I go on vacation. You just go, give me a ticket, I'm going.
Yeah, I like that. And it's great, that your parents have that, because we have, my mother is in assisted living, and it's nice to have a child who kind of takes care of that. So, that
So,
as he's closer there and does
yeah,
that.
so we're just the complete opposite. And I always think, aren't you bored just being there? And he's like, no, it's so cozy and I'm so comfortable here. And all my friends are here and I know where everything is. And I was like, good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you planning any adventures like coming up? I mean, we've had COVID, so it's been kind of hard. We're
All
going to
right.
Florida in like a month.
Are you?
We just booked our tickets, because I have like a whole bunch of tickets from last year from conferences that I had to put on the back burner because, but American Airlines, I have to give them a plug. They're amazing. They've been so good to work with. So I'm really excited just to like get out of my house and get on an airplane.
I can imagine.
But yeah, it is a
Well,
little scary. I am like, I haven't gotten vaccinated because I'm not in the cutoff yet, but where I'm too young. So so I am a little nervous, but I'm gonna be really careful and mask up and all that. So yeah. I hear
well,
Florida's safe. Pretty safe, because well, a lot of them have gotten vaccinated, and it's a lot of outdoor dining.
mhm,
Yeah.
it makes a big difference.
So what adventure are you
So
planning?
my husband coined it correctly, and I thought it was really cute. And this is going to be my theme because every year when I have a big birthday, I do something that's on my not even a bucket list. It's like the must do event. So when I turned 50, I said to my husband, I want to dance tango in Buenos Aires on my 50th birthday,
Oh, I just got chills.
and it happened. It was incredible. So this year we're going to do 6 for 60. And the 6 for 60 is 6 weeks in Hawaii for my 60th birthday.
So
So
nice.
we're
And so
going
you're going to do that in April, or yeah,
very, yeah. So
yeah.
we're going to work for 2 weeks, take a week vacation, work for 2 weeks, take a week vacation. So we're
So
going to,
did you get an Airbnb?
I think we ended up one of those, Airbnb or apartment rental, one of those.
Cool. So
And
neat. All right. So I want to talk about intermittent fasting, because you know that. And I think my audience would be interested in it, because it is a different way of eating that I have heard. I've never done it personally. And maybe you can talk me through it, because I love to eat. And so I don't want to skip a meal. And I love getting up in the morning and having breakfast. So waiting until like 10 or 12 for me is just like I mean, I could create discipline in my life if I wanted, but so tell me the reason behind, what's the scientific reason behind waiting and compressing kind of your eating cycles? Because I think that's what intermittent fasting is about, right? Having a smaller window of eating
yeah,
time.
there are lots of whistles and bells to it. And I think in its most simplistic way, it's shortening your eating windows and lengthening your non-eating windows. And it's always the classic example is You finish dinner at 7. You're not going to have a dessert or a treat or anything else afterwards, but you finish at 7, 7:30, dinner is done. You're done with all kinds of other eating things. And then you go to bed and you sleep till the next morning at 7 and have breakfast at 8. You have fasted.
Mm. Okay.
Or you say, I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you don't eat snacks in the middle, as we're all trained to. We have to eat 6 meals a day and whatever we've been told in the past. If you don't snack, in my point of view, not everybody agrees with my approach, but I'm not them. If you're not snacking, you are fasting. Now,
So you're giving your digestive system a break.
the science behind fasting is that you give your gut time to digest. And when it digests and doesn't get constantly fed with any food source, with you many times carbohydrates, it actually gets in a state of what's called autophagy, where it breaks old cells that are no longer happy good cells down. And so the stomach can then regenerate new and healthy cells. Now, you need to know that this process doesn't happen until about 12 hours of fasting. So one has to achieve that result, or that process, you have to not eat for 12 hours. However, you're going to break down the 12 hours.
Yeah. And the example you gave was 13 hours, 7 p.m. to 8 a.m. Okay. Yeah.
So if you
I
say,
could do that.
So if you say,
I could even do 6 to 8, I think.
something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And it's really doable. And I find that many people think that when they're fasting, they are not eating, they're starving themselves, is probably a good way to say it. I'm not starving myself. I'm not going to wait till I'm hungry to eat. You will be hungry. But I find that having done this fitness nutrition business for so long, we have constantly been encouraged to keep eating, to keep drinking, to fuel our bodies. If we don't eat, we don't have any energy. How can we get energy if we're not eating? And as you may know, Lori, I'm an Ironman triathlete. And so for somebody who doesn't know what that is, it's a race where you swim 2.4 miles, then you bike for 112 miles, and then you run a marathon, which is 26.2 miles. And yes, all in one day. So all back to back. So there's not like, oh, I'm going to take a little nap and then I go at it again. And so when you train like this, I didn't practice intermittent fasting then, because my belief was still, if I don't eat, I can possibly do this. And these will go more into more advanced ways, but this is how I coached for years. You got to eat, you have to have your snack, and here's your healthy snacks, and here is when you eat, and how is the distance, all this kind of stuff. And 2 years ago, I, just like everybody else, I'm menopause, gaining some belly fat. And usually when I trained, the body fat would go down, I get in kick butt shape, and it all worked out well, except it didn't anymore.
Yeah, I was
So,
just going to ask you what shifted that made you want to experiment with intermittent
I
fasting.
said, you know what? I'm eating healthy foods. I don't say clean, because clean is a whole different conversation. I'm eating healthy. I don't overeat. I exercise a lot. I'm sleeping relatively well. I am not stressed, because all my stress is done through running, and life is good. But I kept gaining weight and getting what I like to call flabby, or gaining more body fat. And I didn't know what to do. And I came across intermittent fasting. And first I was like super skeptic. I was like, yeah, they don't want you to eat. And I'm sure there's some supplements you're supposed to be taking.
Gimmick. Yeah, there's always a
Like,
latest gimmick. Yeah.
well, yeah, let's investigate. So I read everything I could get my hands on of the different hours. Like there's a 16-8, there's the warrior diet, there's the stop, eat, stop, and I got a whole bunch of things. And I was like, okay, so what would be somebody like me who exercises? How would I apply this to my own body and get results? So I started, weighing myself, measuring myself, no, I didn't take pictures then. I forgot about that. I was like, I forgot about that. But I started saying, okay, what happens when I follow a simple plan, like I just explained earlier? Did you go to sleep? you eat breakfast later, and then it became just longer, and I skipped breakfast. And I was like, the best results is for fat burning is when you exercise before you eat. So you're exercising on an empty stomach, which means that your body is taking its energy, and I don't call it fuel because it is energy, not fuel, from the fat cells rather than the stuff, the carbohydrates that you feed it. So if you eat before, this is what where your body goes to first, and then it goes, when it runs out of glycogen, it goes to other sources. But if we want to lean out, if we want to lose body fat and gain more energy, that's the cool thing. You exercise before you eat, and then you eat. And it made a huge difference. I mean, I lost body fat. I lost several inches. I lost almost 10 pounds in 60 days without trying. Was I hungry at times? Absolutely. And that brings me back to when we're talking about encourage people to eat. You eat, you need energy, you need food, you need a snack. It's like that we don't even know what it means to be hungry.
Yeah.
It's, oh, it's 3 o'clock, I need my snack. Your body gets used to it. So at 3 o'clock, your stomach says, hey, where's my snack? So if you leave that snack out, your stomach goes, wait a minute, you for 10 years, you fed me snacks. So you have to have a time of adjustment.
Yeah. What I learned too, and I don't know what you think about this, but a lot of people are actually dehydrated. We don't drink enough water as a society. And a lot of times when you think you're hungry, it's actually your body wanting to hydrate. It's like dehydrated. And when by the time you feel thirsty, you're actually been dehydrated for a while, because it takes a while for the signal to get to the brain. So I thought that was really interesting learning that. And, if you feel like you're hungry, maybe just take a big swig of water and see if, yeah.
That's one of the strategies that I start my clients out with is, drink water first and then get away from the food and then see how you feel. Because there's so much to it. Is it emotional hunger? Is it stress hunger? Is it hydration? Is it because it's a habit?
So because my husband is doing it, he opens the freezer and gets ice cream out. That looks really good. I remember Oprah saying, and this always stuck with me, is she had a rule where and she's always like trying to, lose weight. But she had a rule where she didn't let herself eat 2 hours before she went to sleep, because then that gave her body a chance to digest. And you said in the beginning, our bodies take longer to digest. So intermittent fasting really makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of difference. And then you combine this with really healthy eating. So in my courses, I change the eating habits and how we look at food, how we eat mindfully. So there's just a whole back end to it. And it's not like I said, what people say is like, oh, I'm just not going to eat. And then the rest of my day goes normally. No, if you eat crappy food, intermittent fasting is not going to do anything. It's not going to heal your gut, because you then stuff it with unhealthy, over fattening, over salty, sugary, whatever foods, and you're not getting the result. If you want to lose weight, intermittent fasting could be a potential way to go. But if you're like we have, and we're talking menopause, and we're having all those changes, we have a lot of bloating, a lot of inflammation, as you said earlier. And by choosing the right foods with the right combination of the fast, you can reduce that inflammation. Absolutely. Will it go away? Probably not. We're just getting older. But we can do our darnest to say, yeah, if I eat whole foods, lean meats, healthy fats, I am doing something really good for my body and my mind too. But
yeah, you feel better about yourself. What is your schedule? So when you say you should work out on an empty stomach, is that what you do? Because I've always, I've heard different things. You should always work out first, partly I think because you get it done. But then you get the endorphins and your day's better and that sort of thing. But if nighttime's better, do it nighttime, but it can also keep you awake. So I've always heard morning is better. So I'm wondering if you do that in the morning, and then, or what's your schedule like?
I'm a morning person, so I like to get my workouts in the morning. Now, if you're a night person, you do it at night, but give it at least an hour or two before, like if you eat wait 2 hours, I would say, and then exercise. Or you could do it this way. If you're an evening exerciser, you exercise before you have your dinner and then have your dinner. So it can fit in. I'm just always been a morning person, and today is Thursday. And Thursday is my biking day. So we have our spinners set up in the basement. So we have our triathlon bikes on a post where we can just stationary bicycle in place. And that usually happens for some reason at night. I don't know why that is.
Mm.
It's not my favorite time of the day. So by 5:30, we're done working. I'm like, all right, let's go on bike.
And I
Um,
guess if you exercise in the morning, it does give you like it extends that time where you're waiting to eat. You're just like it keeps you busy, so you don't think about eating, right? I've
yeah.
gotten in a really bad habit of like doing eating when I get up instead, and I'm like, oh, I should exercise. Oh, I should exercise. I'll do that later. So you've inspired me to shift things around. That I think it's a hint from the universe that I need to, get up and get that done. I always feel so great too when I check that off the list.
Well, to me, it's a lifestyle. If I don't exercise every day, something is just not right. I must be
Yeah.
sick or something.
Yeah. Today I walked my dog because it's so beautiful here. It's so beautiful. I mean, I'm sure it's beautiful where you are because you're not too far away, but like I'll take 70, I think 79 it's going to be today. It's crazy. March is usually a lot harsher. So I'm sure we're going to get a snow before it's all out. But so what can you say to our listeners in terms of like, what's one thing that you'd like to leave them with that would be a good takeaway, like an action item that you would recommend that they do that could lead them into a better late in life, kickstart in their health.
You know, many people think that in order to do a kickstart, you have to throw everything you know out the window and start something completely new, something that's foreign, that you may not like, you have no experience with. You saw somebody else doing it, and you thought because somebody else is doing it, it'd be great to do this. Do the thing that you already are doing well and do more of it. If you, like you just said, you love walking your dog, I'm sure your dog's loving to go out there for an hour instead of a half an hour. I always, then I go by park benches, they do just almost, I'm drawn to the park bench to do some tricep dips where you put your hands behind and then you push up and down to strengthen your arm. People will look at you, but oh, well.
And you know what I love about my walks too is I listen to podcasts. So it's like a benefit to my mind as well as my body. So yeah, I could learn more if I walked more.
So I
Yeah,
would say do more of what you're already doing well, and
I
then
love that
start
advice.
looking around of what it is that's missing. Because one of the things I don't want anybody to feel is, and I don't like that word overwhelm, that you're overwhelmed, but there's just too much on your plate, or it's becoming a burden, and you really don't want to do it or dig it, then it has to go. It has to be modified. But the first thing is do what you already do well, a little bit more of it, and then just kind of open up your eyes and okay, this is the big secret out of the back, and you're the first person that hears that. I'm going to learn how to hula hoop.
Ooh,
I just
cool.
purchased a hula
My granddaughter is naturally can do. Is that a kid thing? Like the kids know how to do it and then we lose it. I don't know if I ever knew how to do that.
My mom
Uh,
told me after I showed her my first attempt on hula hooping, she says, you loved hula hoop as a kid. And I'm like, when was that? I have no recollection. She's like, when you're about 5 or 6, you were really good at hula hoop.
I think it's a natural thing and then we just lose it.
And so I got myself a ring, I got myself instructions, and
Are you going to teach it?
no. Mm-mm.
Oh, that would be
It's like,
fun. I
it's like
mean,
just for for my 60th birthday, I'm learning a new skill. It's going to be
well,
hula.
I guess if you're going to Hawaii, you need to do that little like hip action stuff, right? That's what they do. They do it crazy. It's like a different joint when they do it. It's like crazy. So anyways, Heike, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge. Heike, I forgot to say that we have a very similar, you have a pursue your spark and you have the spark method, and I have the spark system. So we are spark sisters. Or spark soul sisters. Yes. And it's just so neat because they're very different, and what you do is just amazing. And so I'll put her website so you can check her out in the show notes. And I am so glad. We need to keep in touch.
That was really fun when you reached out and were like, well, we talked before. I'm like, hey, you live down south from me. And now that I know more about you, I definitely let's stay connected. Oh,
yes.
That's perfect.
Yeah. We can hang out.
So much for having me.
Have you ever been, I'm sure you've biked WOND. Is that what it's called? Washington. Okay. Yeah. Washington Railroad or something it used to be called. But yeah, my daughter lives in Falls Church. Like runs right by her house. So yeah, it's a great, I think of you biking. There's so much to do there in that area. Yeah.
That's why I love it here.
Yeah. Have you been to Great Falls?
Of course.
Yes. So we used to go to there's the Great Falls side and the Virginia side and the Maryland side. We used to actually go to the Maryland side when I was a kid because had more like rapids and stuff.
Yep.
So yeah. So if anybody's in the DC area, you got to check out the Great Falls area because it's really cool. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for joining.
It's my pleasure, Lori.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraverage.grandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.